Alright, so before I get into the video, I'm gonna let you know now that I will be talking about the spoilers for chapter 66, so just take this as your warning. But if you're not caught up, then I'll leave a link to the video where I go into the spoilers and leaks in the description and comments down below in case you want to check it out. So it seems like the majority of the community is convinced Tesla is gonna lose his fight against Beelzebub, and I'm gonna be honest, if I was a betting man, my money would just have to go on Beelzebub, but I don't think it's for the reasons a lot of people think, because it seems like the majority of the comments I was getting in my last video on the spoilers for chapter 66 were all about Beelzebub winning, mainly just for the sake of the scoreboard. And if we're only going to be talking about the score, then I think no matter how you looked at it, it didn't matter who was fighting for the gods or who was fighting for humanity, because it's like saying in a roundabout way that no matter what, the gods were gonna take round 8 just because the story demanded it. And again, I'm basing this judgment on which side will end up winning round 8 entirely and only on the current score, because if you didn't notice already, neither humanity or the gods have won 3 straight rounds all at once yet, right? The most we've seen happen were 2 in a row, and this is going all the way back to where it first happened, when Thor and Zeus won rounds 1 and 2. So just going based on the trend of the story so far, you can see why so many are already assuming Beelzebub will have to win. And honestly, I don't think there's anything wrong with that argument either. I think it actually holds some weight if you consider the future of the tournament as well. But, and I say this all the time in my other videos, I just think the story as a whole has been building itself up towards something beyond just Ragnarok. And when it comes to Beelzebub as a character, I'll be honest, I didn't even think he needed to fight this early. I actually believe he could have fought at any time and I would still think he should win regardless. And we're seeing this happen already with Buddha looking into this character called Siegfried. There's also whatever Odin's been up to behind the scenes, so whether you want to believe it or not, it's like the story's been slowly but surely alluding to something bigger than just the tournament. So not only does it make sense to assume the gods are gonna win round 8 because of the score itself, but also considering it's Beelzebub who's fighting, then I just don't see how Tesla has a chance here. And this isn't me saying I want Tesla to lose either, right? But if you've watched my videos before, then you've probably already heard me say on occasion how Beelzebub is one of my most anticipated fighters, and it's not because I think he's gonna automatically win, it's more because I know how deeper his role is to the story. And one of the less obvious examples of this is going back to chapter 54, when Odin had straight up confronted Beelzebub, outright admitting to him he had waited a long time for Ragnarok and wasn't going to allow anyone to disrupt it. And knowing what we know now in chapter 65, this completely changed everything for me, and I really need to do an update on my Odin traitor theory video, because it's just so interesting how Odin admits to Beelzebub that he had waited a long time for this tournament to happen, right? But if you go back to chapter 1, it's like none of the gods had ever even thought about giving humanity a chance to fight. It's even said that the idea itself was just created as a joke, so it's like Odin snitched on himself to Beelzebub by admitting he somehow knew Ragnarok was gonna happen when none of the gods should have. And this could explain why Odin looks so irritated when Beelzebub taunts him by just quoting him. He says, "A long time, how intriguing." And as far as we know, there wasn't any follow-up to this, so it just begs the question now, why did we even have to see this, right? Because now it just leaves the door open for Beelzebub to stay in the story even after he fights in Ragnarok. And this is one of the main reasons I was highly anticipating his fight, because it just hyped him up so well as a character who's brave enough to stand up against Odin. So because that whole Beelzebub versus Odin subplot never got resolved, I just never thought it mattered when Beelzebub fought. It's like the story left the ending to their confrontation open on purpose to introduce Beelzebub as one of the big key players, not just in the tournament but the story overall. In other words, the score itself is virtually irrelevant at that point. I think the bigger picture just got even bigger now that it's not just some new god fighter like Susana or Anubis, but Beelzebub himself, someone whose character isn't only now involved with Odin. We've seen him restore Adamus, he was even able to manipulate Zero for his own experiments, so you can see how he isn't just influencing the story now in the long term, but his role in the story has always been there, whether it was to help out Hades or to resurrect Hajin. And this is actually how I felt about Buddha before we saw him fight in round 6, and now that we're seeing Buddha looking into this character called Siegfried, you can see how the story is carefully building these key players up like Buddha and Beelzebub. And it doesn't only end there, because if you go back to chapter 65, 65. We then saw Beelzebub starting some new beef against Adamus now. And at the same time, I had just assumed it made sense that once humanity finally took the lead, we could have just expected some stress from the gods now that they lost Hades, one of their chief gods. But if you look at both cases where Beelzebub had confronted Odin and now Adamus, it ends almost in the same way. Because we know Beelzebub was originally on good terms with Hades, and by default this meant he was probably on good terms with Zeus and Poseidon as well, and even after Beelzebub restores Adamus, it looked like they were close enough friends in chapter 62. But if you compare the confrontation he has with Odin in chapter 54 and the one he has with Adamus in chapter 65, it's like the story is purposefully making division among the gods. This is more than just the gods upset about humanity in the lead, I think. And if I'm right about the story intentionally causing conflict between the gods, then it really wouldn't surprise me if Odin takes advantage of this and tries to manipulate Adamus into working with him, and it's all just making too much sense, right? Because like we saw in chapter 65, Adamus clearly struggles with understanding Hades' love for all of his brothers. He was straight up about to kill Brunhild because he couldn't comprehend how to honor Hades' death in a way he should have, and ironically enough, it's Beelzebub who made him realize that, so it would just make sense if he's still holding some kind of grudge against Zeus. And to be honest, I really don't think it'd be too hard for Odin to manipulate Adamus onto his side anyway. He seems to just act without thinking, and I'm sure Odin could just bribe him pretty easily, maybe even by convincing Adamus he'd allow him to come back to Valhalla with Zeus gone, who knows. And I know I really have to make a video now to explain all of this in full because I'm barely even scratching the surface here, but the bigger point I'm trying to make here is you can pretty much say Beelzebub is at the center of all of this. And when it comes to Tesla, I think he's the kind of character the story needs if it really wants to convince us Beelzebub has a chance to lose. I mean, just looking at the spoilers we have for chapter 66, Tesla's whole transformation sequence takes up like 8 pages of the chapter, which is so much more than what we've gotten for any of the other human fighters. So it's like the story's trying to sell us into buying into the hype by giving us this really extravagant introduction. And to be fair, even if I think Beelzebub is gonna win regardless, I highly doubt it's gonna be easy for him, especially if the story's committed to making each fight more competitive than the last as we get into the later rounds. So I'm pretty sure there will come a time in the round where we're all just 50-50 on this, one side thinking Beelzebub will win and the other side saying no, Tesla will, and of course maybe that's hard to believe right now at the moment, but I'm confident in the potential of the story that whoever wins, whether it's Tesla or Beelzebub, it's gonna have to be a high diff win. I mean, there's always the option someone loses in 1 or 2 chapters, which is probably the worst outcome, right? But hopefully no matter what happens, this ends up becoming someone's new favorite fight. But that's gonna be the end of the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I'm sure you all have a lot of different opinions going around after hearing what I said, so please feel free to comment down below what you all think. I'm glad to hear what the community has to say. But before I end the video, I just want to give a very special thanks to the channel's patrons: Iron Justin, Nix EXP, Paranormal Beluga, and Jedi Knight 104. Thank you guys so much for your support. You have no idea how much it means to me. And for anyone wondering, I just recently opened up a Patreon where if you're interested, you can sign up too and get into the monthly Q&A I'll be doing now here on the channel. I should be posting the next one up sometime at the start of August, so from now until the end of July, feel free to consider joining. You'd also be helping me out a lot here in a massive way and get a special shout out like this in every single video. The link will be in the description below, or you could just search it yourself at patreon.com/Izanami. But other than that, guys, again, thank you so much for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, I would greatly appreciate it. And of course, if you're interested in more Record of Ragnarok, then make sure you subscribe. I'll be doing more here on the channel like always, and yeah, have a great day.